about what he is looking for when he is thinking about getting animals out onto grass in the spring. Take it away, Juan.
Thank you, Cheryl. Juan Alves here, Research Associate at the Center for Sustainable Agriculture and also Pasture Technical Coordinator. Some of the cues I look when I decide to put animals on pasture is for legumes. I like to see about 20% of flowers in the field. For grasses, I like to see when grasses starts to sort of curve a little bit, of the tips start curving a little bit. It's telling me that they are at their optimum stage and they have the maximum amount of energy, fiber, maximum energy, not so much fiber, and good protein for these animals to be on the pasture. And they're not yet at a pre-boot stage where they can start flowering and producing lignin to support the plant and causing less causing less digestibility of these plants, basically. So as far as when to start grazing in the season, that's a question that varies depending on the year, because some years our pasture starts early, and sometimes in late April pastures are ready and soils are a little bit soggy, and farmers don't want to destroy their sod by putting animals. But they also have to take into account that if you wait too much when you graze the rest of the farm, your pastures are going to be way over mature, and then you will have like a disservice from your pasture. So I would say be very observant and wait until your pastures are in a vegetative stage, but not too fast. You have to graze fast. Moving animals from pasture to pasture as soon as the spring starts.
Great. Thank you, Juan.
Welcome.
And Colleen, would you like to talk to the same question?
Yeah, so what I like to hit first in the season is my invasive chervil in my marginal land. And so that specifically, it's May 20th, and I put my 17 sheep and goats out on 80-foot square paddock just yesterday. They spent 24 hours and it was all chervil. I thought I was doing really great based on its height. It was just about over a typical hiking boots height, and I thought, we're gonna stunt its growth, we're doing great. I should have been walking the pasture because some of them are already flowered out at that low height. They're not seeding or anything like that, but I'm as much chervil as I have to hit. I'm pretty close. So in terms of really watching the invasives that you're trying to target on the farm, getting out and checking them. This is the third year I've grazed these patches of chervil, and I'm assuming that they are responding to grazing and not going as tall and flowering out a lot shorter than you would expect chervil to be. So that's what I've got early in the season.
Thank you, Colleen. And Kimberly, how about same question to you?
Good point, Colleen. I think spring grazing is probably one of the trickiest decisions to make in the whole year. Everyone has the pressures of, wanting to get out. Usually you want to get out, the animals are ready to get off dry feed. Sometimes people have run out of dried feed, and so they're desperate to get their animals out. So it's always a lot of combined pressures, but you can really do some serious damage if you go out too soon. So patience is really, really essential, and preparing for like a year like this where we have not had grass ready for grazing until really late. I know a lot of people are pretty desperate to get out. So you have to always keep that in mind. And the other part that's tricky is that different grasses and forage plants start at different rates. So just out walking this morning, I'm seeing how, which happens every year, is things like orchard grass are ready to go and have, pow, they're out of the ground, and they're just at the right spot almost, but then your legumes are not quite there yet. So it's, again, as Juan noted, it's using your observation to take a look. Okay, so where is this particular paddock at? What's going to do more damage if I put them on there now, or should I hold off just another day or two? And the grasses have might be a little bit beyond what you want, but your legumes are in a better place. So it's the power of observation is it's your cheapest tool, and it's your most significant tool, I think. And it's really important to come to know your pastures. And long term, you want to keep your long-term health in mind. So anything you do now is going to have an impact on the next, in the future years of creating healthy soil and healthy forages there. So, like Juan said, you want to get out there, observe, take a look at that grass. If it's got 2 or 3 leaves and it looks like it's got enough area to photosynthesize, put them out maybe for just half the time, half a day, and then bring them in back on stored feed for a few days. A little combination, or utilizing your marginal areas as Colleen has. That's also a nice trick. Move them into a marginal spot, and then back the next day out on your other pasture.
Great, thanks. And how about you, Jen?
Yeah, I'm Jen Colby, Pasture Program Coordinator, and I have 2 things. One, and orchard grass is the easy one. It's a little bit of a cheat. Kimberly's totally right that everything is growing at different rates, but so I can only do this with one hand. So I'll try to do it with my fingers. So I'm looking for grass that is ready, and that means grass that is creating its own energy through photosynthesis and not depending upon the roots themselves for the energy of the plant. And so this is what is considered to be a 3.5 leaf stage. We've got 1 at the bottom, 2 in the top, and a third one or fourth one coming. That's called 3.5 leaf stage. So that first leaf is entirely grown from the energy of from the roots, and that's the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to get this jump start in when it first starts growing. And the second leaf has this combination of photosynthesis from the sun creating energy, and also it's using some of that stored root reserve. So it's not really until the plant gets to roughly its third leaf where it's actually in a positive energy balance instead of a negative energy balance. So what I'm looking for is plants that are ready to graze, in that they are creating their own energy and from the sun and not just using it from the roots. That's super tricky this time of year. Kimberly's absolutely right. Like, not all the plants are in the same stage. But when I see a good number of plants, if I have a good orchard grass stand, that's great. If I'm seeing other plants begin to go to flower, I feel like that's also really helpful. I'm looking out around me, and there's a whole lot of dandelion here, and it's going to flower. So right now, this area that I'm in is a great one to start. The other piece is I'm looking ahead, and that's a challenge, because if we're looking at our barnyard or we're looking at the pastures that are near where the animals are, that tends to be where there's more fertilization that's happened, or maybe that's where more compost has been applied. And so those are often where it looks really ready. And then, but we have to walk out a little bit more, because if I go up the hill, I will be out of what's beautiful and ready in a day, and up the hill does not look so great. So that's the trick, is balancing what looks really ready and what doesn't look ready at all yet.
Great. Thanks. And I wanted to ask all of you also any tips that you might have in general for early season grazing. Once we get the animals onto pasture, what are you thinking about and how are you doing that? And let's start with Kimberly.
Sure. I think in springtime, what you have to do is keep them moving and move fast. You know, everything is you know, these plants are wanting to bolt out of the barnyard, so to speak. I mean, they're crashing through the doors. They are, you know, reaching for the sun as fast and as hard as they can. So it's pretty hard to stay on top of it. And you always want to be grazing at that, as Jen was pointing out, at that stage of just before the plant is going to be stopping its forward growth and then putting the energy into making the seeds, the flowering, and then the seeds. So that's where you want to be. And it doesn't take long in the spring for plants to get to that, you know, they're like, pow, they want to get there. So move your animals and move them frequently and just keep going. And then your next time around, you're going to be able to slow down. It's pretty intense in the beginning, but it's pretty important. The other factor in that is often our ground is really soft in the spring. And so you don't want them staying in one place for very long because they can pug it up. And this is where lighter weight animals really are important. And I think that more and more grazers are finding that the ideal size of animal, like for cattle, is smaller than what we've pushed for in history. And that you're not always further ahead with bigger animals. These, you know, for cattle between 900 and, you know, 1,040 pounds, right around that range. If you keep them moving, you can really prevent some of that pugging up that might happen on the soft ground in spring. And then sheep and goats, of course, are much more lightweight. So, but keep them moving. That's pretty key in spring.
Hey, thanks. And Jen, do you want to take this one next?
Sure. I was at a training a couple of years ago, and they had a really simple formula, which was, in the early part of the season, graze the plant up and don't start to graze the plant down until later in the season, when you're at the point where the plants are not photosynthesizing and renewing, regenerating themselves so much. And while that training was actually more about arid places, it really is very adaptable here as well. If we're grazing in the spring, and as Kimberly said, and as Juan said earlier, like moving really quickly, that's just trying to take the very tops of the plants and not grazing the plant down into you know, to a very short height. And so it's leaving lots of you know, leaf matter to be able to photosynthesize. And so I love the concept of grazing up, and I really tried to apply it last year at my own place, where I just looked at how quickly could I go through, how much could I graze and still leave. And then later in the season, and when I say later, I actually mean more for our climate, like September, October, when the plants are really not growing very quickly anymore, that was when it was okay to graze it down, because we're not looking to come back again. Each of those times grazing down was actually knowing that I would not be coming back to that paddock or pasture again. So there's different formulas, you know, take a certain amount, leave a certain amount, but and they're all, you know, to be debated, whether it's the right percentage, but I love the principle of grazing up or grazing down. So graze up in the spring.
Thanks, Jen. And Colleen, do you want to take this next?
Yeah. Let's see. I think Jen and Kimberly covered a lot of it. At first, Jen, I didn't know what you meant by grazing up. But we and but I appreciate that one of the springtime things to keep in mind is that it's going to look like I'm leaving a lot. It's going to look like I'm not taking as much as I could. And if I'm doing that, then I'm doing a good job. So, that's all.
Great. Thanks, Colleen. And Juan, do you have anything you want to add in to what's been said? And let's get you off mute.
I was mute. Yes, just to reemphasize that, in the spring, pastures goes really fast, so you have to move to join the pace of the grass. But it's important to, have in mind that there is a grazing arithmetic that you have to know so that you can adapt your farm to your management, so that you have enough pastures or enough areas in your farm that you can move your animals, and with that you'll be able to occupy each of these pastures for 2, 3, maybe 4 times in a season, and then those pastures will rest a lot. And this is great because any pugging that may happen in the beginning of the season, in early May or early mid to late April, will be minimized by the action of the roots, who will repair the soil, because the soil will be resting for a long time. So move fast, as Kimberly said. Watch for the number of leaves you have. Don't worry too much, and having enough number of areas to graze is more important than the area of each paddock, basically.
That's great. And does someone, just in case somebody is listening to this who doesn't know what pugging means, does someone want to define that?
When the ground is soft, this is Kimberly. So when the ground is soft in the spring, as it is in the spring often, and wet, when an animal steps and you have all that weight on that 1 foot or 2, it can easily sink and then fill with water, and it'll be so you'll have several of these, like what we call pug holes, or punched up, and those areas tend to not recover very well. It takes a long time for, if there was a bit of forage in that spot, it's not going to come back very well. So you really want to avoid it. And the best way to do that is to keep your animals moving. Sometimes this can, I should mention, this can also work as a tool. However, if you are thinking you want to overseed to renovate a pasture and improve it, this is actually an excellent way to do that without having to use machinery. Put a lot of animals in there and pug it up a bit and have them mush it up with their feet, and you can broadcast seed in there, and their hooves will push that seed in. And it's a great way to do some reseeding on a pasture if it needs it, without having to use machines.
Great. Thanks, Kimberly. And does anyone have any great thoughts, tips about starting or continuing with early grazing to put in here at the end?
I guess I would just say that what's wonderful and amazing about a grazing system is that it's really flexible. And if we mess it up, there's so many opportunities to fix it, which is something I've just been really grateful for over the years. Like at one point, I tried to slow down my pastures by really overgrazing some of them in the spring. I don't do it that way anymore, but the pastures have forgiven me for hitting them too hard in the spring. Um, and the fact that we can have a mixture of infrastructure and non-infrastructure that allows us to go really quickly through a space and then subdivide it and sort of stay in a smaller space when we're ready to slow down when the grass slows down. That's just a really flexible system. And I recognize it's not for everybody, but it really can work well in a set of changing conditions. So the fact that we're starting slower and later this spring doesn't mean that we won't go later in the fall, and it might mean we still get the same amount of feed off these pastures. We just manage them differently. Maybe we'll get more, even if it feels in the beginning like it's tough. Like we need to get out, we need to get grazing. We don't want to stored feed, but you never know. When the seasons are different from year to year, this is a system that can work really well for that, even if it doesn't work always the same way.
That's great. And I guess I would just remind anyone watching who might be listening or dialing in a different way as we put this out on the internet, that if you have any questions about anything that you've heard here about your pastures in Vermont especially, you can email us at pasture@uvm.edu, and you can tell these folks love to talk about grazing. So signing off for the Pasture program at the Center for Sustainable Agriculture at the University of Vermont in Extension, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Thank you. Good to talk, everybody.
Thank you.